It's 6:38. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, joining us. Thank you for doing 2 meetings straight. As usual, at these meetings, we have a lot going on. The biggest agenda item is the budget, and it is in new business. So I'm gonna just ask us all to stay on point as much as we can, so we don't run too late. The one thing I'm going to suggest we consider tabling is the executive committee discussion, but we don't need to do that until we get there. Is there anything you folks want to add to the agenda? If there is, we should do it now rather than later. I will say that at the Act 46 time, I think each board should speak up and just say what their current plans are, so that we all have a sense of what's going on, although I suspect most of us do. And obviously, you know, the end of the month is still a fair amount of time away, so plans are still being created, but I think people have a pretty good sense. Other than that, we'll keep the agenda as is. Yep? Okay. So let's get started with approving the minutes. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? As there's no discussion, we're moving the minutes of October 4th. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Great, they pass. Thank you very much, Ken. I'm not aware of any communications. Yeah. Now, we did get, I think, a second bill for the dues, but I think we've addressed that.
VSBA dues actually.
Yeah. Okay. So anything else? No? Let's move on. Is there finance and compensation? Do you want to speak to that, Russ, or put a motion forward?
Sure. We need to ratify warrants and payrolls. So one other just very quick comment that we had in the SU Finance Committee as we've gone through the warrants, and just want to remind all the boards should be looking at is the question of the amount of Amazon expenses that are coming up. That more and more people are ordering through Amazon, and is it the cheapest? Is it the best? Is it appropriate? And each board, I think, has started talking about those things, but that's something that we may want to address, and I'll leave that to the individual boards to look at that. And if I'm right, all of the orders, regardless of what school the orders are made, they come through central office. Is that right? So there's some logistical issues there as well. But anyways, so I'd like to, I guess I moved, move the payrolls. I forget, do I move and then second and then run through them? I'm just blanking out tonight in terms of listing the payrolls that are there. So the payrolls, since we're on camera, I'll give some numbers, but so on October 11th, 2017, there were 4 warrants that are numbered in the agenda, totaling $170,929.04. October 5th, there were 5 warrants totaling $560,860.85. On November 8th, there were 6 warrants totaling $350,999.09. November 22nd, 5 different warrants totaling $167,678.04. And then payrolls on September 1st, 15th, 29th, October 13th, 27th, November 10th, and 22nd, all in the range of $323,000 to $347,000 and change. So if that's enough specificity, I'd be looking to get those warrants and payrolls ratified.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? No. All right. I do want to say that I assumed everyone here, we actually have a very light crowd of folks sitting in. You all are sort of here because you work in the district and
Because I told him we had to.
because you got an email. But we do have one visitor, and do you want to introduce yourself? And
Certainly. I'm Franz Reichsman. I'm the chair of the Brattleboro Representative Town Meeting Finance Committee. So I've been tracking the budget deliberations at the supervisory union as well as the high school and town school districts.
thanks. So shall we move on? Is there any other financial business other than the budgets? Any other committee reports? No. All right, I'm going to move on then. Executive committee discussion. Do we want to dig into this now, or do we want to table it for the end of the meeting, or perhaps even the following meeting?
Is it that long? I thought it'd be kind of a quick discussion.
Well, I mean,
I don't
think-
know.
I mean, we don't have figuring that spending time on the budget, I mean, in our time spending on the budget, we do not have a specific proposal for it. We have a meeting on January 25th at 5:30. Note, we're moving to Thursdays at 5:30 instead of Wednesdays at 5:15 to finalize what the proposal will be for the roles and responsibilities of the finance/executive committee and negotiation committee. And I think that the issues will be combining those roles and whether that makes sense. Pluses being sort of the logic that we've been following before is that all the different boards are represented there, so it's a ready-made group, and so it reduces burden on other board members. The minus of it is that it's even more work for the finance committee, though it depends on what issues are coming up, and is there too much authority concentrated in one group of 6 people, one from each of the boards. So those are discussions we'll have on the 25th, and those are open meetings, and you're welcome to come to that. And then I think we're having another SU meeting on February 7th or something like that, where we plan on presenting our proposal.
Okay, that work for everyone? All right. Let's go on to look at the policy review of 2 policies, E11 and F34, and Lyle is going to take us through those.
So E11, it says additional reading. There were so many changes proposed. Actually, Paul Smith, who's been spearheading wellness, is going to walk us through those changes.
Sure. Responses to some queries. I shall sit up here. Mostly, I think, queries from Christina from Dummerston. One of the queries was the K6 endorsement, and I'll see if I don't actually have the most recent, but I'll see if I can direct folks to that. That would be under goals for health and nutrition education. That would be sorry, is it I? Teacher licensure for grades 7 to 12. Health is taught by licensed health educator. For grades K to 6, classroom teacher endorsement allows teaching health in individual classrooms. That is correct because at 7 through 12, the subject areas are broken up. There isn't an endorsement, a regular classroom endorsement, that includes the teaching of health education. We have certified health educators at BAMS and at BUHS. The question comes up with respect to outlying towns, specifically Dummerston and Putney. And the arrangement that we have currently is nurses under their licensure have, and we have licensed nurses at both of those 2 locations, have credentials that include some health education. And while it would absolutely be best practice and a goal of the policy to have a licensed educator, health educator teaching 7th and 8th grades, because that represents the best opportunity for students, we can cover that requirement with the current arrangement. It's not best practice, but it's doable. So that was the first item. The second item were a whole lot of subordinate clauses leading to a statement about whether certain foods were correct or not, and that is, I believe, under nutrition guidelines, C, pertaining to food sold or offered at other times besides school meals. Any food sold in schools must, and there are 4 items below that. Each of those 4 should be followed by an or, and I believe they are now. Did the new version include that?
Yep.
A whole grain rich grain product, or have as a first ingredient or etc. So any of those rather than all of those together. Okay, so that should be cleared up. The next one is a little more substantial. Policy on food sold outside of, and I have to find that again. Christina, sorry?
Page 5D, page 5, section D, part 4.
Section D, yeah, I have a slightly different.
Well, I don't know, my printer might have.
Is that, what's the heading? It's under.
Go back to A. Nutrition guidelines.
Under nutrition guidelines, which letter?
Well, it's right after the
D,
subordinate clause.
okay.
It's right after the subordinate clause issue, which is
Right.
C. D is the next, so.
Right,
it's
so,
in bold.
yes,
Change the
D is,
asterisk.
right. So the comment was, this policy would prevent typical bake sale fundraisers as part of offerings during the school day, which should now be included as in some asterisk somewhere, starting at midnight the night before and running till a half an hour after the official end of the school day. That is to say, if we were to adopt this policy, no non-smart snacks compliant snacks would be sold in bake sales through the day up until a half an hour after the school day. That's following guidelines presented by state of Vermont in terms of health and wellness policy. But yes, it would say we aren't going to provide sugar-rich bake sale products during the school day.
So when we go as parents and walk around at the high school and they have little bake sales going on,
Yeah, ixnay on that thing. Yeah, yeah.
Though
And-
if it's at parent-teacher conferences, it's more than half an hour after the end of the school day.
Right.
Depending on
But-
what time your
Yes.
conference is. Yeah.
Yes.
If it's a bake sale in front of the library during lunch hours, that's really a no, right? And intentionally so. We don't want to be in a position where we're offering students a choice. Oh, I can go buy a couple of brownies for lunch, or I can use what is, federally regulated, smart snacks compliant food that would be purchased in the cafeteria.
So we at Guilford wouldn't be able to do the bake sale that supports the local food pantry during school hours?
During the school hours, it would have to be a half an hour after the school
That
day.
wouldn't work, because then you have no one at school.
just a small problem.
It's kind of shameful.
But I get the idea of it, but I don't see, in my knowledge of the Brattleboro town schools, I don't think that's a big problem, but I think it's more of a problem at the high school level.
Or the outlying areas, because the bake sales are pretty huge as a small fundraiser for different activities that the school, we can't provide for the kids, or the kids want to be able to provide for the community.
The wellness policy guidelines suggest that there are other things that can be used for fundraisers, and if you want to sell food, make it smart snacks compliant.
So what about like the
So on that-
winter sports fundraiser that we have at Academy, that's the butter braids you're selling, but you can't consume them right then? What is
That's
that?
probably
You're taking orders, you're not actually
So it
selling.
doesn't
providing
matter.
it for yeah.
It doesn't matter if that.
It's not being sold as consumable in school.
It's consumed.
What about for parents who send in snacks for kids' birthday parties?
There is a piece on celebrations that is B under nutrition guidelines, D, same place we were. Schools should limit celebrations that involve food during the school day to no more than one party per class per month. We're not selling it, it's being sent in as part of a celebration. We can certainly send home information to parents about smart snacks, smart snacks compliant recipes, other ideas for celebrations, but it's not saying, no, you can't have celebration.
Yeah, but
But
is
it
saying
also
that-
says this does not pertain to food sent in by families for celebrations, such as birthdays or goodbyes.
So
you
can
got-
two
So
kids
the-
have a birthday in the same month and both bring in cookies? That's the
Yeah,
fundamental
the nutrition
question.
guidelines don't pertain, that is C, referring to, under D, under nutrition guidelines. This is not about school, foods sold to students as part of class or advisory activities.
I
Right?
think that the thing that you just said about limiting celebrations
That's the one
is
about.
not talking about birthday parties.
It
The one-
is talking about birthday parties, but it's not saying that when you have a celebration, you have to be smart snack compliant.
I think
Okay.
in Putney, once a month, our cook makes cupcakes for all of the kids that have birthdays that month.
Mhm.
It only happens once a month, so I think that maybe falls into
Yeah.
that guideline.
It does
I'm not
say
sure if
though,
it does,
this does
actually.
not pertain to food sent in by families for celebrations.
Yeah.
That's what
And
it
that's
says right
something
after
separate.
limiting. So I think it's talking about school-led celebrations like a holiday party or
Oh, okay.
Halloween stuff.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, Michael's had his hand.
I'm just curious how many boards are aware that their schools hold bake sale fundraisers. I mean, I know that Dummerston holds bake sale fundraisers for
The outlying
couple-
schools do
for
an awful lot to
couple different
supplement.
things.
Oh yeah, they do it all the time. They just don't do it at school.
Yeah.
They do it downtown,
Yeah,
in
but it
Alabama,
doesn't-
at restaurants.
But are you
It
asking
wouldn't be
if it's
effective.
during the school day?
That's half hour.
Well, I mean, school day is defined very broadly, as we know, to include everything from midnight until
30 minutes.
But like
30
our-
minutes after school when everyone's gone.
I would say in Putney, there are not bake sales during the school day.
Yeah,
They
and-
happen after, at pickup,
Is that
or
half
on the
an hour
weekends.
after school day, though? I mean,
That's really rare, though. I've never.
We tend not to have
Yeah.
bake sales.
No, we don't.
We have
Yes.
like the welcome center and stuff.
I know the
Yeah.
high school does because I've sent stuff in with my son.
I think the high school's a big one.
So
So-
in Dummerston, we do a classroom, there's a particular grade classroom that does a bake sale that raises money for the Humane Society every year. And so it happens before the school day begins. It involves not only selling the things and donating the money, but it involves counting and using those skills and providing change to other students. It's more than just the food aspect. So, I mean,
It's the whole
obviously
community
there's a whole community aspect to it. I'm not in favor of this part of the policy in any way, shape, or form, and just want to express that.
So,
My bad.
this would be a good time, we all need to take this back to our boards, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion about it. This is the time to ask Paul questions, since he is here. So if there are additional questions.
Actually, I thought this was for final.
Yeah, we need it to go back,
Okay.
because there's,
It sounds like a two-part question to me also of what's happening right now and how lucrative it is either financially or to community and other skills, and what we agree we want our kids to be headed toward, which is what this is actually about, right? But like this new policy is not meant to reflect what we're doing now, it's meant to reflect what we hope for our schools.
Right, so how I envision it is, say in a second grade classroom, the teacher is talking about eating healthy. On the day that the kid can go to a fundraiser and buy a sugar-rich product for breakfast. Do we want that to happen?
I mean, like I go for school, typically it's done after lunch, after you've had your breakfast and lunch. I mean, it's an after, and it's like I think maybe 3 times a year they may have a bake sale. So it's not every week, and I think that's, if your administrator is kind of gauging what you're doing and it's not an every week thing, I think it's very appropriate that you pick and choose like a food pantry or the Humane Society and have a goal and plan to give this money away too, and there's got to be a whole thing. So I'm with you. I think that portion should be struck right out of there. I mean,
can we hear from Jill?
I don't remember what we have to do with these policies. Can we strike lines and
Sure,
just whatever,
you
right?
are here, you've read it multiple times, you can set the policy
'Cause what-
here and now.
So what I'm hearing is if we strike that part and we put some phrasing in there that says this is at administrator's discretion, then I think we're all okay with the idea is okay, but we don't want to stop. I mean, if we put administrator's discretion in there, then it can become right after school as opposed to at the same time as lunch, which doesn't sound like it's happening anyway.
Would it be acceptable to think of it in terms of attempting to limit those opportunities so that we're conscious of, yeah, you can have a snack sometime, that's okay. But we want to be conscious about the messages that we send about eating healthy.
I know that Academy School went through this several years ago, and the first initial reaction when he told parents was like, really, cupcake wars? I mean, you're not going to let kids bring cupcakes in. But then, and two, some parents, responded, well, okay, you can send in fruit instead, but fruit's a lot more expensive than a cupcake, And so the reality of how that played out, and but it didn't become a war. It became, well, this is a goal and an awareness, and then it was quiet and it was fine. So I think if we write down something like at administrator's discretion at some point in there, I think you cover both sides of it.
Honestly, I could agree to that. And I think, most schools don't go above
I'm sorry, Walter.
and beyond.
Yeah, go ahead, Walter.
No, I mean, I imagine some of these statements we can't change if we're trying to meet some federal or state guideline, but others we can. And so you're saying this section D is something that is, we could change that without affecting any sort of federal or state guidelines.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at D3 about the celebrations, it says the schools will encourage parents to provide, healthy snacks, whatever. I mean, that's the spirit. I mean,
Right.
We hire principals to make decisions. There's all sorts of decisions and judgments that they make all the time. And so, with a statement of that, boy, less sugar is better, but leave the details to the administration. It's good. So, will you craft language, or do we need to craft language?
Frankly, it would be great if we could approve the policy now, because I'm hearing from Department of Health, I'm hearing from nutrition guidelines folks, is this policy in
We need
place?
a motion of where to put the phrasing.
Sure.
Well, let's hold up. Hold on for a sec, Ruth. Are there any other parts of this policy that need to be discussed, or is this the primary topic? This is it. Well, Ruth, did you want to?
I move that we strike D4, only foods and beverages, blah, blah, that meet the nutrition standards may be sold through fundraisers on the school campus during the school day. I move that we just strike that out of the policy.
I'll second that motion so we can have discussion.
Discussion and Sandra, I'm sorry I cut you off.
Right.
Do you want to contribute now? Is that
I have
pertinent?
a question. Do you want to finish talking?
Yeah, let's finish this then if it's not
Yeah.
pertinent to this motion. Any discussion?
Can we say we recommend that only foods that meet the guidelines be sold as?
So you're looking at D1?
That
What
sounds
was
similar
just
to what
read,
Jill
but
suggested.
Instead of striking it, adjusting it to be a little more flexible. It seems to me like a reasonable goal. I think we've gotten from Paul and from the Vermont Department of Health that this is where we're supposed to be headed. I agree. I'd love to see us meet in the middle.
I like that recommendation.
I'm just looking, is that okay?
Yeah.
That, looking at, if we strike 4, then I'm looking at 1, 2, 3. 1 says food or beverages offered during the school day, shall be. So I'm just wondering if we get rid of all of them and just sort of modify that 1 to say, the administrator, if that's the proper word, will, at his or her discretion, attempt to encourage then the rest of 1, food or beverages offered during the day to meet the USDA guidelines. And just give flexibility within paragraph 1. And then, because then after that, then it talks about once a month. And I don't know if we, for us to say it's once a month and not twice a month, I don't know that information. And 3 is loose, that we'll encourage parents to bring in healthy snacks, and 4 is, is what Bruce proposed. So I think maybe one paragraph sort of going off of number 1, but just saying, but we need actual language.
So you're suggesting Ruth withdraw her motion?
Yeah, it's a friendly amendment, because I'm trying to get rid of 4 too, but I'm trying to get rid of 2 and 3 as well, and just have 1 as somehow a recommendation, a guidance for the administrator or for the school, if that's the way to put it, to achieve those goals as seems reasonable.
Yes, Paul?
Would it be easiest to say, preface A by saying it is recommended that food and beverages offered during the school day, and also for D, it is recommended that only foods and beverages that meet or exceed USD Smart Snacks. Recommendation, not a requirement.
So that means, Ruth, you would need to withdraw. Or you could restate it.
I'm trying to think.
But not that last one.
I'm willing to withdraw it, but I want to see what we're going to do instead.
Okay, so why don't you temporarily withdraw it?
And I'll withdraw my motion.
And then maybe Emily, you could put the motion forward based on Paul's suggestion?
Yep. Well, I like what Emily had said before about leaving some of this language in there and just changing it from a requirement to a recommendation, because I do think it is good that naming these things that happen around food brings it into the administrator's mindfulness as to what they're going to be, recommending to their staff around that. So mentioning bake sales and parties as something to consider, I think should still be in the language of it, not erased altogether.
I think that follows with Paul's suggestion. Well, Emily, why don't you speak, and that might clarify it.
Can you remind me of the number?
So under nutrition guidelines DA, add the following at the beginning. It is recommended that.
So DA? I don't see a D. D1.
D1, sorry, mine is
So
number
D1.
D1.
So, yeah,
And then it would be D4. It also add the wording, it is recommended that.
Okay, so I move that in the, what is it called? Health and Nutrition, the Federal Child Nutrition Act Wellness Policy, we revise the language of D1 to say food or beverages offered during the school day.
It is recommended.
It is recommended that food or beverages, etc. And D4, it is recommended that only food and beverages, etc.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion on that now? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Great. I would just suggest that we all bring these back to our board so those, and we can talk about it
Vote for the
with.
amendment and vote for the policy.
There were a couple more pieces.
Yeah.
I'll just be really quick. In the policy under goals for physical education, D, there was a concern about increasing the minimum, so it won't be D, will be, goals for physical education, A4. Schools to increase the minimum physical education to 150 minutes per week for elementary school students and 225 minutes per week. That's a recommendation from the state of Vermont based on research from CDC. And the operative term is schools shall try to increase the minimum. So again, it's aspirational. It's not a requirement that we move to that because it would require offering additional PE.
I was just going to ask, does that do the recess time count towards that, or is it actual just physical education? So we actually would have to up our...
Goals for just physical education.
We'd have to up our percentages of teaching to meet the need.
Yeah. So again, it's but the way it's written, it's aspirational, not required.
Okay.
Sandra, sorry, Christina, you had a question?
I had a question back.
Sure.
About the physical education.
That's okay.
Okay. I'm curious that the number 3, I guess it's B3, standards allow additional no-calorie, lower-calorie beverages and no more than 20-ounce portions of calorie-free flavored water. I just would not feel comfortable with diet drinks for children, I won't drink them.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's healthy. So if we're talking about wellness and flavored, artificial flavor, I don't know. I had a son that was allergic to a lot of colors, and it was a problem in school. So I don't know what that means. If that means more diet, it's low calorie, but it's got other
additives.
considerations. So.
Thoughts on that, guys?
I don't know the answer to that. It looks to me as if the focus was to reduce the amount of sugar, but that doesn't mean also reducing the amount of added, sugar substitutes.
I will say that I think a lot of the kids probably have additives in their food already, not only, so I would be cautious for us just to limit it to drinks. It might be a larger discussion, but I don't want to waylay us from this discussion that you're putting us on.
Research that I've done, diet drinks are not healthy.
Yes, yeah. You're right.
Do we know what's actually offered in each of the schools right now? In Guilford, yeah.
They're pretty different programs.
No, that's they know of.
Number 3, the beyond this.
Nutrition guidelines.
Because that's just saying that the schools can offer that, it doesn't mean they have to. So I don't know if you're asking to prohibit those things. If I'm looking at the right one, it's B3, beyond this, the standards allow for, am I looking at the right thing or am I lost?
Yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't say that schools have to, but it's allowable, I think. Beyond this, the standards allow additional no-calorie and lower beverage options for high school students. That's just for high school students.
Yep.
If I'm looking at the same
Yes.
thing you're looking at. So it
Yes.
doesn't say we have to. So I don't know if you're proposing that we ban it and not permit it, or... So this doesn't seem to be one of the ones that say shall or must. It's, I mean, I share your concern about artificial foods and things, but I don't know if this is just allowing it in schools, if I'm reading it right.
Well, this only pertains to BUHS also,
And it
right?
is just BUHS.
Since this is a
So
wellness
that's only
policy,
high
school.
it just raises concerns, and I guess I defer to Marissa, and that's my understanding, and a lot of special education, there are children that are affected by these additives, am I right? That it could make it more difficult for them in school if they're drinking drinks that have, instead of real fruit juice, or maybe salsa water that doesn't have additives.
I think really for any kids, a lot of children now have allergies to those chemicals. You know, whether they have a disability or not. It just seems like more and more children have allergies toward those, right?
I know last year, I'm not sure, I haven't been to the BUHS cafeteria this year to eat, but I know last year they had a sugar-free drink. I forget what it's called, so that it's there. There's also a plastic water
There's
bottle
vitamin
issue.
water and regular water and milk.
Yeah.
When I went to the
Walter, what you had a comment?
I was just, I mean, there's no suggestion that this is allowing, or that schools are required to have Diet Coke with aspartame or something else. I mean, I think there are a number of low or low-calorie options that have natural flavors, or, stevia, some would suggest that's a natural sweetener. So, I mean, I think that, and especially since we're talking about high school students here, I think that we shouldn't start looking at, because when the new sweetener comes along, then we'll have to go back and do our own scientific analysis.
And I guess I'd just say, I hope whoever makes decisions about it would have an awareness of the possibilities of offering these drinks, what to focus on that. And I don't know how you say that, but. anyway.
Could certainly add in something there, maybe a number 5 that is recommended that additives, non-sugar additives be kept to a minimum or be avoided whenever possible.
Non-sugar additive is like saying I'm anti-chemical. I mean,
Right.
the entire world
Yeah,
is
yeah.
made of chemicals. An additive is a very broad term that can mean all sorts of things.
Artificial sweeteners, I think is still.
Artificial
really-
sweeteners.
And really, ultimately, once the kids get to the high school level and they are able to go off grounds, they're going to Burger King, they're going to the local stores right around that area and having what they want. So I know we like to always try to watch out for what our children are having. The reality is we can't be over their shoulders all the time. And I think if we do the best by saying that we're going to offer the best that we can, that's what we need to do. I mean, there is a reality of what we can and can't do.
So it's 7:15, and we could really talk about this for a very long time. So how do we want to handle it? Do we want to, Paula's asking for us to approve this
We can
policy.
Totally live with it being delayed, but it would be nice if it were approved, but if you really want to look at it more.
Well,
Yeah, more power to
I
you.
think we can acknowledge, hold on, we can approve it and then revisit it.
Sure.
I have a suggestion, why not add an E that the addition of artificial sweeteners and artificial colors will be considered in beverage choices offered at the school. So that would be part of the
Make that a
consideration.
motion.
Please do.
Artificial sweeteners, so artificial sweeteners, the use of artificial sweeteners and artificial colors in beverages offered to high school students will be considered in, sorry?
The health effects of.
No, I don't, in deciding
What
beverage
beverages?
offered. Beverage
Will
offered.
be taken into consideration.
Yes.
So,
Did anybody
did you
what
get
I
that,
did?
Kim?
Make it sound
Please
good.
do it.
And just that the use of artificial sweeteners will be taken into consideration.
When purchasing or ordering.
Right.
Ordering.
When planning, menu planning.
But that's not very neutral.
Yeah.
Right.
You were suggesting that it
Will be taken into consideration.
taken into consideration.
Okay, do you want
So
to,
something like limit the selection of beverages containing artificial sweeteners and colors wherever possible.
I love
okay,
it.
is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on this? All right, so we have a motion that says what, Kim, precisely?
I have the use of artificial sweeteners and colors will be taken into consideration whenever possible. For
I think he said something about limiting.
So Kim, that might be
Limit the use.
under, I'm not sure the numbering, but it's under the caffeinated beverages, so that would be nutrition guidelines, B3, and what's the next level? E.
So that'll be a little
Selection of, or offering beverages containing artificial sweeteners and colors shall be limited wherever possible.
Okay, do we need to restate that? No. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, if there is interest in bringing this policy back, let's do so, but shall we move on?
No, we have to actually vote the.
Oh, right, the policy.
Yeah. And
Did you want to address anything else?
so the PE is aspirational, and there were some suggestions about nature activities, and I think a policy about encouraging nature activities would be great. There are a number of activities that we would need to discuss, include or not include, and it might really be, if we really want our kids to be out in nature as much as possible, we need to have a separate policy about
Right.
that.
Separate policy to this.
Yeah. I mean, it is wellness related, but I think there are other aspects that we would consider as part of that policy.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we approve this wellness policy
As amended.
with the amendments already voted upon.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of the motion Jill stated? Aye. Any opposed or no? We're good to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, moving on. Transgender and gender nonconforming students, the second reading.
So there were some changes with that. In the title at the top of each page, non-conforming, the suggestion was to change it to creative. And you will see throughout the policy where it had been non-conforming, there should be a strike-through with creative and to take its place, with the exception of under definitions where it already was creative, that has a strike-through and it's now turned to non-conforming. That's because it's giving a number of different a number of different ways, terms, thank you, that have a similar meaning. So non-conforming, creative would both be considered terms that might be used there. Yes.
I think on page 4, the title was missed. I thought there was a heading that non-conforming was.
I see it, yep, at the very last one. Okay, I'll have that fixed.
Is there a spare paper copy I could see? Does anyone have one?
It looks like Russ can share.
And those were the only changes that were suggested.
Okay. Why don't we put forward a motion and then we can have discussion?
I move we adopt Code F34, Transgender and Gender Creative Students.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion?
Can you repeat the motion?
Someone, Sandy wants to have the motion repeated? I think you just moved to adopt the
policy F34.
To adopt it.
Well, yes, now that
Now we can
it's been,
discuss
the motion
it.
has been made, we can discuss it.
Okay.
Discuss
That's
it
how it
because it's
works.
on the floor.
And, sorry, you moved with the changes, right? The one we're looking at right now.
I probably should have added with the changes noted.
Okay, so that's the change. All right, discussion?
Question.
Yes, Jill.
So, this is page 3 of 4. Use of gender segregated facilities. Says a transgender student will not be required to use a locker room or restroom that conflicts with the student's gender identity. And that sounds good for the transgender, but what about any other student who's not, who was in the locker room that may feel really uncomfortable?
That was my only concern there. I mean, even in the locker room at the gym that I go to, I would feel awkward having someone come in.
Well, I think the idea of these policies is to create a climate in the school so that all the students do feel comfortable and recognize that student as just a girl like me, regardless of what their assigned gender at birth was. I mean, that's sort of the whole point of the whole policy, right? That the students are viewed by their peers and the adults in the building as being whatever the gender is that the child identifies as.
I get that, Robin, but I'm trying to envision exactly how that plays out in a locker room where everybody's getting dressed.
Generally, I mean, I don't know how often are even high school students even actually naked in locker rooms together at this point. I'm wondering how that actually plays out, and Robin, thanks for saying what you did. I think it's the normalizing of where we want to be that people get to define themselves, and there will be awkwardness for some people along the way, but this is a step toward more safe space for all people. And creating, I think having a policy like this creates more space for conversation with classrooms and with kids and families that can help make it actually safer for everyone.
I'm just doing all that. I'm just trying to actually envision, so what happens in a high school locker room? I think kids are getting dressed in there. I mean, that's my kids, when they're getting dressed, they're changing clothes. I don't know if they're down to their skivvies and that's it. I guess I don't go in and look, but you know, at what level, even if a bunch of guys are down to their skivvies and someone who's in the process of changing over is in that same locker room, I don't feel like that's really comfortable for either side of this going on. And I think to get to the goal that we're talking about is fantastic, and I'm wondering if there needs to be a bit of a middle ground here. I mean,
Well, there is some more language in the rest of that policy.
Do you want to point that out?
In the second paragraph, it makes clear that any student who expresses a need or a desire for increased privacy will be provided for. I would assume that that would also apply to cis students who are uncomfortable with trans students in the locker room with them.
Right.
I don't see any reason why they shouldn't also be allowed if they're uncomfortable with it. This policy covers everybody, cis, trans, gender fluid, gay, straight, bi, it covers everybody.
Sandra?
I thought that in reading this, that this policy was really for the protection and the privacy concerns, confidentiality, and of how children and families would be handled, treated, that had this situation. And not so much that we're going to try to get young children to figure out all this when I think it's a complicated thing. And I agree with Jill that this could really be difficult. I know I was very self-conscious as a junior high student when I had to be naked and go take a shower with everyone, but not nearly as much as I learned later. Some of my friends shared just horrible years in junior high or high school that I wasn't aware that they were struggling so much, but it's a sensitive age for a lot of kids, and they're dealing with their own sexuality and whatever, trying to figure out who they are, and I think we need to protect the confidentiality, and that's that second paragraph there.
Which second paragraph?
Any student expresses a need or desire for increased privacy, reasonable alternative arrangements should be made, that would be a confidential decision made to the family and a student, and not necessarily, it seemed to me we were trying to protect their privacy. And then to say that if they choose to, then they could use whatever locker room, it kind of, it didn't feel good to me. I just don't know how else to say it.
The next paragraph also talks about minimizing stigmatization. So I feel like that it's up to a student, and many people have said students and families. We work really hard only to involve families if the student gives us permission to involve families. So not all families are aware that their child may be questioning. So I feel like we work really hard, especially at the high school, to ensure that our students are first protected, that their privacy is protected, and that they will work, they being the administration and counselors, work at whatever level the student is comfortable, ensuring that either the student changes in the locker room, changes in a bathroom, showers in the locker room, has another place to shower. I believe that is happening for us, and this makes it more formalized.
Yes.
Just to echo that around the issue of confidentiality, which is vital for all students and transgender students. So I was a middle and high school teacher, so I don't know the transgender status of my students, nor should I know. And so if those students were singled out to use a separate bathroom, that is actually revealing that information, that's a violation of FERPA in a sense. So part of the goal of this policy is to assure that no child is violated in a way that their identity, this is revealed about them, if that makes sense. So. Not necessarily. And all students have access to gender-neutral facilities. That's what the Vermont Agency of Education recommends as best practice. So.
I'm just wondering, because there are people that are uncomfortable with this, and I mean, we don't have any principals here. I mean, in your principals, I'm wondering if maybe we should go back to our own boards and just ask principals how this would be implemented, because it just says, you know, a transgender student will not be required to use. It doesn't say, and so that it's giving each student's choice and giving each student that. And so, I mean, I'm fairly comfortable with it, but I can understand the discomfort. And maybe if we talk to principals at each of our schools as to how these issues have been dealt with in the past, or how they would, do they feel comfortable with that? And maybe that would give you comfort, and to decide which way you want to go on it. I don't know. I mean, it's listed as a second reading on the agenda if we need to take action tonight or not.
Have an additional reading.
We could have a, yeah.
So just to share an experience, real life at Brattleboro Union High School for district band, where kids came with their school clothes and needed to dress up for the band concert. In the boys, because I'm a boy, in the boys' locker room, I identify as a boy, there are stalls and there are lockers and places to hang things. And some kids, some boys chose to use the stalls, and some boys chose not to. And there wasn't a big deal about which one you chose. Everybody was still in the locker room, right? If some kids had to be identified, no, you can't come in here, you got to go use the gender neutral one down the hallway, that's a problem. So I think we have the structures, and I think the image that, oh, they're all going to get naked in the locker room ain't so.
That was the reason for my whole question at the very beginning, Paul. I was trying to envision how does it play out? What exactly happens in the locker rooms, in the bathrooms, right? I don't know how, I'm not gone in them.
In reality, is going to school and changing in the high school, at a high school level, most of us whip off our clothes and get dressed, so you are going to know basically who is female or male, if they have not gone through a surgery, to be honest. You know, you're going to try to wrap a towel around you as quick as possible, because that's what, you know, me being a chubby girl didn't want to have that anything showing. But long story short is, you are going to know. And,
well, I think
and some
the whole
people may
point
or
of
may not be comfortable with it. And I mean, I was never comfortable having myself shown.
Michael,
So
and then Robin.
it may be a different situation for other people, but I'm just thinking from my perspective, I think it's an uncomfortable at that 7 to 12-year-old, 12th grade. I mean, I know it's maybe different for other people.
Michael?
I think what Paul was saying was actually just the opposite, is that the actual physical layout of the school that we're talking about, not the hypothetical school that we're talking about where everyone gets naked in the same room, but the actual school that we're talking about has facilities where people can use discretion about whether they want to change in front of other people or not.
Right.
And so to the concerns that people may have in that regard, I think they've been answered by Paul directly.
Robin, and then Laura, and then Kim.
Actually, you just.
Yeah, you did just
covered
we're good.
that.
Thank you very much, Michael. Yeah.
Well, and I think we're giving our high school students less credit than they deserve. They don't see things that way. You know, how I look at my high schooler when we have discussions. That's, no big deal. They don't have the reservations that we do as adults, and I don't think we're giving them enough credit for that.
Okay, I sense we're ready to move on this. Am I incorrect? Is there any further discussion? Ruth?
I would favor passing this, and this probably won't be the end of it. There probably will be situations that will come up and you'll realize that you have to change this. Thankfully, I won't be here when it's done.
Okay. So there's a motion on the table to approve this policy, which is F34. I'd like to say, it looks like we are ready to go ahead and vote, so all those in favor?
But can I just mention, we're voting to adopt this with the changes?
Yes. And that's what the motion, yes, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Congratulations, guys. Good work. All right, we're moving on. VSBA dues, we talked about this last time. We really need to talk about it today and move on it. The policy is different than, or how they've billed us is different. I think we're all familiar with this, right? Do we need to talk about it, or can we go ahead and have a motion and then have discussion within that motion? All right, Ruth.
I move that we pay the VSBA dues.
Well said. Is there a second? Any discussion?
What are they?
The total is, I thought it was less than that.
This is past due, so let's see.
No, that's- So Ruth, do you want to, it's 11,235 and 64 cents.
In the amount of $11,235.64? Is that what you want?
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
What was the question about whether we were double paying? I wasn't at the last board meeting.
Some people thought they may have already paid dues this
If
year.
the individual school board
Individual
has
answer is
paid
no.
dues.
The answer is no.
Okay, then that's it.
Okay.
Maybe that's what she was thinking.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstention? Great, we're cruising. Indigenous Peoples' Day, this went back to boards, as I recall. Is there a motion, or shall we chat before we dig into discussion past motion?
I'll make a motion, the same motion we had at the Brattleboro Town School Board, right?
Yep.
That we now observe what's been known previously as Columbus Day and refer to it as Indigenous Peoples' Day.
I think it's currently known as no school.
That's
It's not Columbus Day right now, it's just nothing.
So it's not, so that might not, is that the correct motion then?
Well, I think that was our motion, but we made
Okay.
mention of that.
I wasn't at that meeting.
Oh, we made mention of it because we approved the idea, but we also made it clear that we never said Columbus Day in our materials. We
Right.
just say fall holiday or something. So we, as a board for Brattleboro, approved the idea of calling it Indigenous Peoples' Day, although we don't currently call it anything, so we weren't really changing any practice, but anytime it would come up as Columbus Day, we'd make sure to call it Indigenous Peoples' Day.
It's the second Monday in October, isn't it? So we could just say that in the motion, that we observe the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples' Day.
So we're making lots of friendly changes to our
Fine.
motions
I'm fine.
tonight, but that's
You wanna
fine.
second?
Okay, I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion other than what Jill has already chatted about?
Clarification on what the motion is?
Yes, you want to restate it?
We're now observing the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples' Day instead of Columbus Day.
And Robin, you seconded that?
Second that.
I assume that you all talked about this at your boards. Any discussion? Yes, Ruth.
I guess I kind of have a problem with this. I don't mind if we have an Indigenous Peoples' Day. But why does it have to be on the day of Columbus Day? Is that just because the government doesn't want to give somebody another holiday?
I think it's in people came and talked to us. It was in recognition of the fact that Columbus came into this world and the new world, and we're recognizing and glorifying someone that effectively destroyed a way of life for the Indigenous people that were already here.
Ruth, I already had the fight and it's not worth it.
Okay.
I feel also that if Columbus Day is on the calendar, why change something that's already there?
I will point
Old
out that
school.
Columbus Day is not on the calendar.
it typically is treated as a second Tuesday.
But I mean, it's, our WSESU calendar does not celebrate
No, we're
Columbus
not
Day
talking about
already.
the SU calendar, we're talking about a traditional calendar, you know, like on the wall. traditional
Right, but
calendar.
what we're
but the
voting
motion
on is
is-
what's on the WSESU calendar.
I agree, Alice.
Good girl.
Any further discussion? All right, so can you restate the motion one more time?
That we observe the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples' Day.
On the WSESU calendar?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or opposition?
Nay.
2. All right. Passed with 2 negative votes. All right. So we're on to Act 46, and then we're going to talk about the budget, and then the website, and then our meeting schedule. All right. That's what the work is being done, yeah. So we won't have to talk about it much. So can we just briefly go around, each board can just touch base. December 26th is looming, so we just want to get a sense of what others are doing. Christina, do you want to start?
About what Dummerston is doing?
Yeah.
Well, Dummerston's been meeting forever as an alternative governance subcommittee since last March. The board has held one hearing last week to hear from the public for an hour. We're holding another hearing next Tuesday from 5:45 to 6:30 to get public input about the things they liked about the merger and the things they didn't, to help inform the board as we look at our path forward and try to craft, as we look at an AGS, try to assure that we're meeting the needs of our community. We are also looking to hold a vote at town meeting as to if there's an AGS or a merger of a different kind or whatever, to hold a vote so that people in town can vote on how we go forward.
Okay. Vernon?
Vernon voted, I believe it was November 21st or thereabouts, to form our own AGS subcommittee. So we, since then, have been formally joining the Brattleboro and Dummerston group. We have a meeting tomorrow night in Vernon at 6:30. So if anyone would like to attend.
Jill or Kim or
So we in Brattleboro have had one special meeting just specifically on alternative governance and looking at what the Alternative Governance Committee has proposed thus far. And we've heard from the public on that. And we have asked for all of the information to be submitted to us by tonight for our meeting that we just concluded. I think David indicated that there'll be more updates coming by the 13th, so we will have a final vote on the 20th. We also tonight had a letter that everyone could look at, which would be, if we were going with what the study committee proposed, what we might submit as well. So both of those options are on the table to be talked about at December 20th meeting and a final decision made.
All right. Guilford and then Putney.
Guilford has a vote scheduled for December 18th, where we will look at any proposals brought forward. We do have a member of our board who's now part of the Alternative Governance Structure Committee, who's been attending those meetings, so we're expecting to receive a proposal from them to consider. And we also have the same letter that Jill referenced that we will be considering on the 18th as well, that is in support of the articles that the study committee put together.
Thank you. Annie?
In Putney, sorry, I'm Putney right now, not the UHS. We are consolidating all of the information that we've gotten over the last 2 years. All of the data, all of the opinions, the results of the vote, and also the articles, and we are planning on submitting a report rather than a proposal. So our consideration of anything that the AGS committee comes up with will also be included. that's where we are right now, and we do intend to directly include the Putney voices that we've received both through our survey and through letters. And in my bag here, I have a copy of literally every letter to the editor that Jill could find, and we're going to have them scanned. Well, I'm going to scan them, and we'll also be just including them as an attachment. And once I get them scanned, sure, if you want them, I'll be happy to give them to your boards too.
All right, thanks, Annie.
So we did also send up a letter from Brattleboro to ask for an extension, which was asked for by folks, and we received an immediate response that there is no extension allowed. But I'm confused by what Putney said they were putting together in Lyle with what we were told. Don't you have to make an actual recommendation, not just some opinions?
Your board needs to make, send something up that this is what our plan is. If you don't, then you'll be left with whatever the state decides. You're at the risk of whatever the state decides.
So if Putney doesn't choose to actually put forth a plan, but rather make comments on other plans.
But what was
that's
that
allowed.
letter from then? Why, I thought that was one that had already been sent.
The letter that I just distributed tonight?
Yeah.
No, that's the letter for consideration. If we wanted to send that letter as our response
Okay.
for what we want, and Guilford.
Aren't we all at the state's discretion anyway? That the plan is just kind of an endorsement of the plan that the state is still going to decide? Okay.
All right, moving on. Time to talk about the budget for 2019. Russ, you're gonna chime in, and with
Yeah,
Frank
I will. I'll
chiming
sort
in
of
too.
give a general outline and.
Everyone
and
has it
then-
in front of them?
Yeah. Does anybody need to stand up? Because we're gonna plow through some numbers here. Are we okay?
We do have.
So guys, it's almost 7:45. Let's try to end the meeting at 8:30. Does that work? We could even do it earlier. We could aim for earlier.
I think it's 8:30, but 8's a good stretch goal.
So do you want
All right. Yes.
Okay, just in preparation, as we're gathering and looking, what was just handed out, you all should have received on Monday. So trying to break with past practice of tonight being the first time you ever see this thing. So, and I hope that reports from the Finance Committee back to the boards were fuller than they have been in the past. So we do have the document. Here, so I'm saying I've got to get the right document in front of me. Here it is. It's dated 12/6/17 that was just handed out, and that's the summary that we have. And what I'll do is sort of give a quick guide of the way that's organized, go through some of the high points on it, and then see how much more discussion and questions you have. And fortunately, Frank is here to fill in a lot of the details. And by the way, we should all thank Frank and his staff. I mean, you've all seen it. I mean, I came in and it was the end of the Brattleboro town meeting, and was going through, and the fact that you can remember all these things for all the different boards, and on the night when I presented this to the BUHS board, the half hour before I spoke was Woody presenting the BUHS budget, and I don't know how you do it, but I'm glad you did it, and the support by your staff, because I know you always say that, and it is an amazing central office. Anyways, so the form of this 29-page document you have in front of you, the cover sheet gives sort of the general types of things. There's program description is looking along the top, fiscal year 17 budget, the actual fiscal 17, fiscal 18 approved, which is what we're in, so we don't have an actual yet. Though it seems like reports are that at least at the SU level, that things are going well. The fiscal 19 year proposed is what we will be voting on tonight. And then the percentage change. The next column is the page reference, so that administrative and transport revenues is on page 6, and the expenditures for that is on page 12, so you can reference there. And we were presented separate budgets, and we have like a 69-page version of this as well that we've gone through. So revenues are at the top, expenditures are at the bottom. And the revenues, total the 18,672,000, and I looked down to total expenditures expecting to see 18,672,000, but it was 18,822,000, which confused me for a second. But the next line is the $150,000 deficit, which is what we're proposing to fund from the surplus fund, what do we call it? The
fund balance, yeah.
Fund balance. And so that fund balance has been hovering around $1 million, and we expect at the end of the year, even with the $150,000 coming out, that it'll stay at about $1 million. So that will reduce the tax burden for everyone. I'll come back to page 1, but page 2 outlines the way that the expenses are distributed. So on the SU budget, the bulk of it being special education, but the other items being central office, transportation, and food services. So this was a change that went in last year, so it's what's currently happening this year, is that all of the SU administrative and support and instruction and special ed programs of school age, not triple E, preschool, is instead of being based on equalized pupils, and you need that for taxes and all that, is instead we've been using last year and we're proposing this year is using a 2-year average of just ADM, average daily membership.
That's the easy.
So what that does is that, at least the way I look at it, is that it sort of spreads the risk. I mean, in the pages to come, there'll be expenses, and at certain levels it goes down to the town specific. So once we get into the more of the details, certain towns, special ed expenses or other expenses might go up because of families moving in, moving out, different sorts of placements, different sorts of services. So there's a fair amount of variability, not so much in Brattleboro town because it's so large. I mean, the dollar amounts may be sort of the same, but on the smaller towns, that impact can be pretty dramatic percentage-wise. And so, whereas the expenses will be shown as being, there are some that are district-wide, but some that are school-specific. It will show those and show some increases and decreases of some fairly dramatic amounts because of just individual situations. But the burden will be spread equally among all the towns just based on population of the number of kids. And so I think that's an important and a good move. The early ed services, it's exactly the same thing, except BUHS is not part of that. Of course, BUHS, what comes to BUHS, is all funneled to each of the towns as well. And then transportation is done town by town, school by school for what the actual services are. And somewhere, I'm just trying to look, food services are done that way too. I'm not seeing if is that in that page too?
Food services are self-funded primarily through the child nutrition program. So there's really there is not a cost allocation methodology. It's based on the number of meals served at each school and the type of contract that's awarded.
School specific. Let's see, allocation. So Page 2 is the allocation. Pages 3 through 5 deal with how these expenses are allocated to each of the 6 boards, the 5 towns in BUHS. At the top are statistics about student numbers, and then sort of area by area what the allocations are, and then so that's in pages 3 through 5. 6 through pages 6 through 11 that you go horizontal, so-called landscape, go through the revenues program by program, and then starting on page 12 through the end are expenses by program, and then where appropriate broken down school by school. But again, those are the numbers so we can keep track of things. I think that was maybe brought up at our last meeting. It's a way to look at those where the expenses are, but then the funding mechanism is just spread out for special ed and others through just a general per capita basis. So just looking at some of the numbers back to page 1, and in the interest of time, I'll go quickly, but we can spend as much time as you want and you feel is needed, that you feel comfortable with this. So the expenditures are broken up. The 100s are the administration, instruction, transportation, and there's a 3% increase there, going from 3.2 roughly million to 3.3. And just as an example, I don't propose doing this unless you make me go through it line by line. But if you go to page 12, you can see the breakdowns. And page 12 is just for those things, for administrative, instruction, and transportation. And so that first general block is the 1100s, are the district-wide regular education. I think that's principally English as a learned language, second language. Not much change there. The second, the 2200, is the staff and support services. The 2300 is the support service general administration total. So that's where superintendent and the staff are included there. Fiscal services is the finance part. And then operations maintenance of the plant is pretty small, since we don't actually own anything, or the SU doesn't own anything. And then transportation services at the bottom. And I just note that 5-year contract is coming up, and we'll have to renegotiate that, and that will be put out for bid, and hope that we get more than one bid this year. So, and then those numbers, the totals then come right back to page 1, where you can see the administration and instruction of the $2.4 million, and then the transportation for the 865, totaling that the $3 million plus. The bulk of our budget, and this is relatively new, it's been phasing in over the years. I forget the act numbers, but as the special ed staff, I mean, there's always been some special ed district-wide that's been in central office, but the teachers, certified staff came in, and then I guess it was last year when support staff came in. And Triple E, I think, has always been at central office, or at the SU level. And then those are pages 13 through 18, 18 through 20, and then preschool at 20 to 21. I'll note a couple of the bigger figures, and Frank, our other committee members, and also thank the committee members as we're going through these. I'm no longer at the town level board, but when these things come up and we go through it, the town rep members know exactly what's going on. And so if I'm misstating or forgetting something, please jump in and tell me where these, where the specific services are. One of the big jumps was in the 2152, the speech pathology services, a 40% increase, 215,000. But that was realigned on staffing from schools to the SU.
Page number?
I'm sorry, page 13. It's page 13 that I'm looking at. It's the first page of the special ed. So in that one, there was a jump, but that was realignment there. And some of the other items, I think maybe the drop in the occupational therapy, maybe in some of that realignment and those types of things. Another, a 77.9 increase in the other support services is, if I have this right, in one of the towns, it was a tuition and was brought in-house, and so this is basically a half of full-time equivalent to help that student in that specific school. So tuition will go down, but our services are that line goes up, but that represents other things that are going down. In general, in special ed, one of the and again the town board, you all know this better than me since I left the town board. When I was on the town board, the STEP program was coming in, which was integrating the services and integrating students and sort of mainstreaming students more. And that's going more and more into all of the towns. And so there's readjustment there, and the numbers it seems to be a win-win, which is that we're providing really good services. Students are not, in separate places. The services are there, they're integrated, and costs are going down, which is one of the reasons why, total special education, I'm looking back at the first page, looking at line 28 of a 3.1% drop in total special ed expenditures. Another thing that helped in keeping costs down, and this is true in all of all of our individual budgets, POHS too, is the health insurance was much less than what we had, what we were looking at. So those things are coming down as well. I mean, there are all the salary increases. There are various turnover of staff that often brings the expenses down as well. I think I'll stop there, but I can try to answer questions, and Frank can certainly answer questions.
Do you want to touch on anything that could be added, Frank?
Just maybe, thank you, Russ, that was really good overview. I'll just emphasize, Russ did mention it on page 3, as we turn to the local budget process, and I will either have met with you or will be meeting with your individual boards. Russ mentioned at the bottom of page 3 that those are the impacts on the local budget. It's essentially saying of all of this spending that the Finance has reviewed in October and November, there are revenue sources. Those revenue sources are primarily special ed aid from the state, and we're left with that bottom chart down on page 3. In total, assessments from the SU to the local districts are down 322,000, and you can see the breakout, down 96,000 in Brattleboro Town, down 27,000 in Dummerston, and so on. And that is a reflection of the more efficient, model that has been gaining steam, and so much of that is the special ed group. As Russ has said, out of the 18 million, about 12 million is the special ed budget, and we're seeing that down 3%. So that's it.
And we should thank Marissa and allowing the staff for not just. Yeah, I mean it's it's impressive, the quality of services and actually making it less costly as well. So just keep doing that.
All right, any questions? Yes.
The STEP services, is it WSESU? That it's included in the WSESU budget for STEP services?
So there's a regular ed and special ed, and in Vernon, they're considering a regular ed model that's based after the special ed model. So if it's a regular ed program, it's going to be at your local school, but if it's special ed, it is in Wyndham.
In where?
Wyndham Southeast, yeah, Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union, this budget that you're looking at now. So keep in mind that this budget presents programs that are obviously implemented at each school, so that's what Russ was pointing out, that you can get to the school level and see the staffing and the tuition and so on for special education. However, when it comes time to pay the bill, as Russ said on page 2 and 3, it says, well, we don't charge what you actually consume, we charge a proportional amount based on how many students are in each district as a proportion of the total supervisory union. So for Vernon, it says that you are 7.2% of the population, so you get 7.2% of the total bill. And that is the bill net of the state aid.
Okay, anything else? Is there a motion to approve the budget?
So moved.
Second? Okay, so we're voting on, do you want to actually articulate the actual? Step up to the plate and put the number out there.
I make a motion to accept the FY19 Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union budget in the expenditure amount of $18,822,734.
So who seconded that? Annie Beekman. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I want to thank everyone for working on this budget. You guys, I mean, Russ already spoke to it, but it was really wonderful to have you guys come, as you do every year, and sit down at the table with the Finance Committee and explain to us so that we can then explain to our boards and then feel comfortable about voting for such a budget. And Frank is your leader, as along, obviously, Lyle is the leader, but, you know, Frank's in the numbers, so thank you, everyone. All right, so we just have the website and the meeting schedule to talk about. Do you want to touch base on the website?
Sure do. So our website, actually, Paul, when was our website created, WSESU website? 2001. So it's time for an update. Shockingly,
we know.
It's time for an update. And we've contracted with someone to start all over. She is working with Julianne, Paul, special ed, Gary Parjik, who's the technology coordinator, and myself, to put together a whole new website. Some of the things that you can look forward to is the fact that clerks at individual boards will be able to post agendas and minutes so that it doesn't always have to go through Barb or go through someone at central office. So, right, that Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock when you've decided that you need a special meeting and nobody's there to post your agenda, you'll be able to do that by yourself. The time frame is she has started working on it, looking at a lot of other school districts around the country to see what theirs looks like. She started taking pictures at each school so that there will be a school link. So when you click on the WSESU, you'll have a school link, and a picture of your school will come up. Let's see, some other things that we're thinking about. Do you have anything else to remember? There'll be drop-down tabs for special ed, for different forms, for teachers, a section for families, parents, families, people that might just be looking to move into the area. What can they find out about the area by going to our website? Am I forgetting things?
Well, in addition to allowing, say, the clerks to have a piece of the site that they would upload, download, edit, there are also sections of the site that, say, curriculum and assessment could edit or special ed could edit. So it's sort of using the newest approach, web-based, cloud-based, divvying out some of the responsibilities so we can be a little more responsive. The software that we're currently using is not quite of an age with the site itself, but is pretty dated software and pretty top-down, held in one place. And it's clear now that we can distribute a lot out to folks and have them do the editing.
We will have a trial run, which a few people will be asked to try the new website before the old website is shut down. When I say shut down, what probably will happen is if you go to the old website, you'll be directed automatically to the new website. But there'll be a trial run to make sure that things are working, hopefully sometime in the winter or as late as the spring, but soon.
How much did we pay for that?
To buy the site license, it was $270 to $280, and the person that's doing it is charging us $3,400.
Walter?
So it must be mobile responsive, or it will be, so it can
She's
see
looking at that as well.
Yeah, easily.
Yep.
And that's only the SU website, then the individual school websites are still under each school.
But isn't it correct that those could be updated using the software?
I would assume.
I believe that's the case. Yeah. I mean, you could switch to this
The
software.
high school is being updated. She's actually started with the high school, so the high school and the WSESU will be very similar. Our hope would be that eventually all schools would come on board so that we're pretty similar everywhere.
Would they entertain going school to school to educate how to use or upgrade or change?
Oh yeah, I'm sure that there will be, especially any board clerks.
Clerks, yeah.
I think we're all really excited about this.
Yeah, I sure am.
Long overdue.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, anything else? Any questions? No. Can we talk about the next date? What are we talking about?
We had February 7th, but it seems like it's always backed up to a Brattleboro town, so we're hoping that we might be able to change that date to either a second or fourth Wednesday or a first or third Tuesday or Thursday. Those are days there are no meetings.
Are there preferences?
Tuesday is preferable to Wednesday.
I agree.
What day are we looking at specifically?
Could be the
So
sixth.
it would be February 6th? Because February 13th is going to be the high school meeting. Right.
So sixth?
So
That's okay.
No, what's that?
6 is actually one day before what we were going to do, and that's not a Dummerston meeting, correct? Dummerston is 2nd and 4th, I'm pretty sure.
What about the 8th? So Beth could be there.
Oh, that's
Where
right.
is it gonna be?
Could we do February the 8th?
We have a meeting.
That's
That's a
but we can.
Thursday.
We're easy.
Okay.
At least
That's a Thursday. Apparently,
I think
I
we're
can't make
easy.
it on Tuesdays.
I don't know. Can we do that then?
I already have something on that night, but we can send somebody else.
Okay.
Well, I work
All
on
right.
Thursdays, so
Oh.
just send everybody else.
We'll have to make sure, I don't know what David's schedule is with the board, with the select board.
They're usually on
Tuesdays.
Tuesdays.
They're on Tuesdays.
Yeah, so he'd be
Oh,
more
so
likely
he'd
to be
be
able to
more
come on a
likely.
Thursday than a Tuesday.
So the 8th, it is then?
Sounds like that works, and we'll have it in Putney?
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 Because we have a meeting. Sounds good? All right.
6:30?
Yes. 6:30? Anything else? Lyle is going to touch base on one thing, and then we'll adjourn if that works for everyone.
What is happening at this next meeting anyway?
What's on the agenda?
Why do we need to get?
Discussion around the executive committee will be one of the things that's on the agenda.
So we don't have a budget or anything?
Yeah, I mean, if it looks like it's not going to be a weighty meeting, we might put it off. We'll play it by ear. All right, Lyle?
A board chair asked me to be in touch with the VSBA around open meeting law. Recently, a citizen sent around an email to lots of board members and lots of citizens. And there was some concern about open meeting law with so many board members being included in this email. And the advice that I got that I should pass on to you is a citizen can do whatever they want to with email. You are held to a different standard. You can certainly read and respond. However, when you're responding, you should be responding reply sender. You should not be responding reply all. Reply all would or could break open meeting law. So if you're getting emails from, and lots of people are CC'd on that email, you should reply sender only.
Okay. Good meeting, everyone. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second it.
All right. Thank you, BCTV, and thank you, Franz, for coming. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?